We are David and Susan Blazer. We're members of Slater Baptist Church in Slater, Iowa. And we served 40 years in Brazil.
We both graduated from Faith Baptist Bible College, so this area in the center of the United States was an area where we had friends that we were in Bible school with that were in the ministry. Susan traveled with music groups from Faith, so there were a number of churches that she had contacts with. And then both my father and my dad was a home missionary in Washington State, and then I served as a youth pastor out there for a couple of years. So Washington State really became our main center of support.
The mission decides that for us. We served 38 years with ABWE, and we served 4 years as independent missionaries. So the mission board, because of where you go and the standards they have, they set your budget. We were newly married. We had been married 6 weeks before we went to ABW candidate classes. And so we lived with our parents. We didn't have jobs at the time. David had resigned his position as assistant pastor in the church in Seattle. So we lived with each of our parents, my parents in Iowa, his parents in Washington part of the time while we raised support. And we also lived with an older couple in our home church in Seattle, Washington. They traveled quite a bit, and so we lived in their home and took care of their home. So we had no rent, and as support came in, we were able to pay for our own food, and that was about it.
We were full-time traveling from church to church.
Yes.
We didn't have to worry about a work schedule or anything like that.
We didn't have much, but as the money came in, we just kept going.
Okay.
We were able to, we had 100 meetings, not 100 churches, but 100 meetings within the first 14 months. And we had just about all our support.
So we basically had 2 geographical areas that we concentrated on.
Yes.
We had a few meetings outside those areas, but really never had much support outside of those, the basic Iowa, central U.S. area, and the Washington State area. We usually sang. Susan gave a testimony a lot of times. And then depending on, especially if it was like a Sunday morning service, it was mostly me.
Preaching.
Well, it probably was the fact that, we didn't have money, but we didn't have expenses other than travel expenses.
The support came in. We had a really lot of contacts, which made a lot of difference. With his father having been a home missionary for many years in Washington, and him having been assistant pastor, a well-known pastor in Seattle, Washington, and he had been ordained the year before we were appointed. So all that, we never ran out of contacts, which made a lot of difference.
So from the time we were appointed until we actually reached the field was what?
Year and a half.
Year and a half? A little over a year and a half.
I think 50 years ago it was much easier than it is today. Things are a little more complicated today than they were then, because we didn't put out all the pamphlets, but we had our prayer card and everything. It was, and we had meetings other days of the week. Now you often have churches that don't have Sunday night meetings, and we always had Sunday night meetings. Just don't be afraid to do everything. We did Awana, we did Christian schools, ladies' meetings, children's church, VBS. We did everything. We did everything that was offered to us, and we never turned it down. And you have to trust the Lord. It's definitely a life of faith, but God provided, and we wouldn't have done it any different.